وروسته له هغې چې په هیواد کې د افغانستان اسلامي امارت واک ترلاسه کړ په هیواد کې ډیری هیوادونو خپل سفارتونه وتړل او ډیپلوماتان یې وویستل. پاکستان د ګوتو په شمېر یو له هغو هیوادونو دی چې لا هم په کابل کې سفارت پرانیستی پاتې دی او سفیر یې په کابل کې له افغانستان سیاستوالو او مشرانو سره لیده کاته کوي. په اوسنیو شرایطو کې پاکستان څومره اړین دی د افغانستان لپاره؟ په اوس وخت کې دغه هیواد د افغانستان لپاره څه کولی شي؟ هغه پوښتنې دي چې په دې مرکه کې ځوابوو. دې او ورته پوښتنو د ځوابولو لپاره په کابل کې راسره د پاکستان سفیر ښاغلی منصور احمد خان میلمه دی. سلام، زه نجیب لال یم، تاسو ځانګړې مرکه له شمشاد څخه ګورئ. Mr. Ambassador, thank you. Welcome to Shamshad and thank you for joining us.
Assalamu alaikum and thank you very much for inviting
Let's begin with the embassy.
Yes.
Pakistan embassy is still open in Kabul, while other countries shut their embassies and they have evacuated their embassies. Why do you think they shut their embassies but Pakistan embassy is still open?
I think this is an important phase for Afghanistan and Afghan people, and there is, we believe there is a hope for bringing an end to a long conflict in Afghanistan and having an engagement with the Afghan people which can lead Afghanistan to an era of peace and stability. I think many countries' embassies in this endeavor are open. If you talk about embassies of many regional countries like Russia, China, Turkey, Iran, other neighbors of Afghanistan and Pakistan, they are open. And we are open with the mission to assist Afghan people in this phase, to keep our borders open for any relief work, to keep our engagement and connectivity open for any evacuation work. And we believe that those embassies who have been engaged, the engagement open with Afghanistan, Afghan people during the coming weeks and months and years, because the goal should be, the objective of the international community should be to bring an end to an era of more than 4 decades of instability and war in Afghanistan.
You talked about assistance and cooperation with Afghan people. What is that assistance specifically? Is it issuing visas?
We have, during this phase, we have been issuing visas. Visas have, in any case, for last 1 year, we have brought a very liberal visa policy for Afghans. But during this phase, particularly those people who wanted to temporarily relocate themselves, Afghans who wanted to temporarily relocate themselves in Pakistan for their work or bring their families to Pakistan, we have been issuing visas. Initially, we were also operating special flights, evacuation flights for taking Afghans and foreign nationals and Pakistanis from Kabul to Pakistan. But then when the civilian part of the airport stopped operations in last few days, about a week ago, after that most of the movement either has been through Torkham or through Chaman. So we have been helping in that.
What about the number of staff and diplomats you have in the embassies? Has it decreased, the number?
Our own staff, we are working at our full strength. We have a strength of about slightly more than 100 people working at the embassy.
Have you decreased it?
And we have not decreased it. Some people normally are on leave. A portion of them is on leave because their families are in Pakistan. But about 80 people, 80 persons, 80 officials, including diplomats, myself and other support staff, they are working. And I would like to convey to your audience that they are working day and night to help this process.
And it's not only in Kabul, Mr. Ambassador. What about the consular services in provinces?
Our embassy is fully working in Kabul. Our consulate general in Jalalabad is also working. Our consulate in Herat is also working. 2 of our consulates, Mazar and Kandahar, we are waiting for the channels of communication to open, I mean flights from Kabul to open. Once flights open or we find another safe way of their transfer of their staff back to their stations like Mazar and Kandahar, they will also start working.
As I said in my intro, Mr. Ambassador, you're one of those few embassies in Kabul which are not shut yet. Do you feel secure, your staff, the diplomats in Afghanistan?
I feel secure I have been working in Afghanistan for many years. I was a diplomat here before, this tenure as ambassador also. I have a special passion for my relations, my contacts with Afghanistan. So we we believe that Pakistan-Afghanistan connectivity requires that in any challenging times, we need to provide support to each other, and that is the objective with which we are working here even during this challenging time also. But there have not been any security challenges so far or security threats so far, but we have to be aware of the security threats also. Like we saw a few days ago, there was a big blast at the airport. Many Afghan lives were lost, many lives of US troops.
We are coming to that, Mr. Ambassador. Yes. We'll come to those specific questions about the blast.
Security threats exist, but we have to continue our work also.
We saw your pictures and you met with the Taliban leaders here in Kabul. What did you specifically discuss?
We have been actually engaged with all Afghan leaders, not just Taliban. Pakistan has a policy of across-the-board engagement. For many, many years now, we engage with all Afghan leaders. They include Afghan Talibans, but they also include other Afghan leaders. Like I met former President Hamid Karzai, I met Dr. Abdullah, I met Gulbuddin Hikmatyar. Pakistan's focus primarily is to ensure lasting peace in Afghanistan, lasting peace, to help bring lasting peace and stability in Afghanistan. Afghans are, we hope that Afghans will work out an inclusive political setup, an inclusive political settlement amongst themselves. But in order to, as part of international community, as part of Afghanistan's neighbors, to provide support to that process, to provide facilitation to that process, we meet. But in my interaction are just, having an exchange of views with these leaders. What kind of political dialogue or what kind of political settlement is negotiated among Afghan leaders, among Afghan parties, is up to them, and we have no interference in that kind of political negotiation.
You have also met with the former president, as you said, with Dr. Abdullah.
Yes.
In the meantime, you have met with the Taliban leaders. What were the focal points in the meetings of these two different parties in Kabul? Did you have the same dialogue with the both parties, or there were differences?
Throughout the peace process, throughout the negotiations in the peace process, which have continued for now more than 2 years, our focus is that there has to be an inclusive political settlement in Afghanistan. There is no military solution to the Afghan conflict, and Afghans have to work out an inclusive political system in Afghanistan which respects international norms, which respects human rights and humanitarian issues, and which is based on rule of law. So this has been our message in my meetings, continuing meetings with all Afghan leaders here, and we hope that during this process, the Afghan leaders will come up with a forward-looking political system which is inclusive, which is broad-based, which includes participation of all sections of society, all political shades of opinion, and all will provide participation to all ethnic groups in Afghanistan. So we hope that Afghans will work out a purely intra-Afghan setup in Afghanistan.
Pakistan, as the biggest immediate neighbor of Afghanistan, it used to have relations with the Taliban. And now, when they came to power, do the relations differ now?
Again, I would like to reiterate that we have a policy of across-the-board engagement with Afghans. There have been 4 million Afghans living in Pakistan. We have engagement with all of them. We don't discriminate between those who are Taliban or those who are non-Taliban. And that is why you have seen in this phase of difficult period, uncertain period in past 2 weeks, most of the Afghans have expressed their desire to go to Pakistan even during this period. So our relationship, I would like to clarify it once again, and I would like to emphasize it, that it is with the Afghan nation. And I think this is a historic opportunity for the Afghan nation to put behind, to move forward and put behind these 4 decades of conflict, internal conflict, political conflict, the dimensions of the military conflict, and move towards a peaceful political setup, inclusive political setup in Afghanistan.
Do you see any possibility of such kind of setup?
I think we believe that Afghans, as I said, will seize this historic opportunity and come forward. We believe that Afghan leaders, Afghan nation has wisdom, has sagacity. They have been through some troubled times in past 4 decades, and I think they will use this opportunity to move forward and to devise an inclusive political system here in Afghanistan.
Mr. Ambassador, a number of Afghan politicians went to Pakistan prior to the so-called collapse of Kabul. Are they still there?
No, this visit was part of an ongoing engagement plan with Afghan political leaders as part of our across-the-board engagement with Afghan leaders. You would recall that last month in July, we had planned an Afghan peace conference where we wanted to invite, we had extended invitations to all leading Afghan politicians to visit.
But they were not allowed by the government of Ashraf
But
Ghani.
at that time, it could not be possible, and the previous government had requested that this meeting should be postponed. So that meeting was postponed, but then after Eid, these efforts were revived, and we wanted to invite some leading political figures in Afghanistan. And the purpose of invitation or purpose of visit was also to engage with them as to how a political settlement, an inclusive political settlement in Afghanistan is possible. And it coincided, by chance it coincided with the period at which, when these events of 14th and 15th August occurred, when Taliban entered, but they were there for political consultations about the peace process. According to my information, many of them have gone, or I don't have precise information that those who are there, but I think many of them have gone. But Pakistan's doors remain open for all Afghans for a constructive engagement. Again, one-point agenda for Pakistan at this moment, Pakistan's government, Pakistan's people, is to have long-term peace and stability in Afghanistan, because it is important. Whenever there has been peace and stability in Afghanistan, Pakistan has benefited. Whenever there is instability in Afghanistan, Pakistan has also suffered, because we are the closest neighbor of Afghanistan in that respect.
You have met with Afghan politicians in Islamabad. The foreign minister, Mr. Qureshi, met the Prime Minister, Mr. Imran Khan, met with Afghan politicians. What were they specifically discussing? Is it whatever you said is an inclusive government in Afghanistan, or something else?
No, we have been, during the peace process, we have been engaged with all Afghan leaders, across the board leaders from various political parties, various ethnic groups, and this interaction has been focusing on as to how to move towards an inclusive, broad-based, comprehensive political settlement in Afghanistan, to put an end to the conflict and move towards an era of economic engagement, economic development, regional connectivity between Pakistan, Afghanistan and Central Asia, or South Asia and Central Asia. So I think this opportunity, when these leaders were there and invited by Pakistan to be there, it was also for the purpose of the exchange of views with them, talks with them, as to, and to receive their inputs as to how this process can be helped by the international community, by Pakistan and by other countries. And I would like to also add that Afghanistan's neighbors, all Afghanistan's neighbors in regional countries and international community is at this moment supporting efforts for lasting peace and stability in Afghanistan. So that is why I call it a historic opportunity.
What if you tell us about the outcome of those negotiations in Islamabad with Afghan politicians? What was their desired, what was it a desired outcome?
I think the outcome of these negotiations, the opinion that came out, or the message that came out of these meetings, is that all these leaders have supported the need for an inclusive political settlement in Afghanistan. And I think this message has also been reiterated in our talks with, whenever we have met Taliban leadership, either in the peace process or whenever I have met them here, or whenever Taliban leaders have met in Kabul in recent days with former Afghan President Hamid Karzai, Dr. Abdullah Abdullah. The focus of all these talks at the moment is how to evolve an inclusive political settlement acceptable to the Afghan people and to the international community.
I mean in Islamabad, about the Afghan politicians, do you think it is possible for them to return?
Well, I think Afghanistan is their own country. They can, of course, they are not no more in Islamabad now.
But they are not in Afghanistan.
Yeah, they are.
Will their return be condition based, you think?
No, but that is not a question to be answered by me, because they are Afghans.
Because you have discussed with them on different issues.
No, we have discussed with them on in the need for inclusive political settlement. But as far as their independence to come back to Afghanistan, and they are Afghan nationals, they are Afghan citizens, so this is their country. So I don't think there is any question of they not coming back to Afghanistan.
Let's come to the future and the upcoming government of Afghanistan, which is being discussed nowadays in Kabul. From the lens of Pakistan, where do you see the Taliban are when it comes to shaping and forging new government?
I think at the moment they are, the indications are that everyone is looking forward to the date of 31st of August, which is the date, tomorrow, which has been identified as the date of, or agreed as a date of withdrawal of foreign forces. We hope that the withdrawal will be completed safely by tomorrow, evacuation will be completed safely by tomorrow, and then I think after that there will be, we hope that they will, the Afghan sides will come forward with their plan for human rights and humanitarian issues and rule of law. And we hope that Afghans will come forward with a plan, with a political plan which brings an end to the past 4 decades of conflict in Afghanistan.
Yeah, when it comes to forging a new government in Kabul, Mr. Ambassador, there are some options. For example, transitional government, an interim government, a shura council, what they called, will it be a republic, will it be a monopolized, completely monopolized government? Which kind of government do you think is in favor of the country, Afghanistan?
Again, I would like to very categorically state here, Pakistan has consistently said that Pakistan will not like to support one form or the other form of government or setup in Afghanistan or system in Afghanistan. It is the right of Afghan people, it is the right of Afghans, it is the responsibility of Afghans to come forward with a political setup with the future political setup in Afghanistan. Whatever political system Afghans agree, Pakistan will respect their decision, Pakistan will go along with their decision, Pakistan will support their decision. So I would like to very categorically state that Pakistan doesn't have any intention of interfering within Afghan politics. This is something which Afghans have to come up. So what kind of political government they choose for themselves, it is an Afghan decision, and we have not done so in the, the peace process has been continuing for long. We have reiterated this principle consistently in that peace process, and we also maintain this position that it is up to Afghans. They have to come forward with their future plan.
Yeah, you said about your intention. There is no intention of Pakistan which kind of government is shaped in Kabul. What if I ask Mr. Ambassador, which kind of government do you expect from the negotiations you had with the Taliban leaders in Kabul, with the former president, Mr. Abdullah, with the politicians in Islamabad?
Yes.
What do you expect?
All of them agree that it has to be an inclusive and broad-based government. Afghans have to be, all sections of Afghan society, Afghan political opinion have to participate in it and accept it. All sections of Afghan society have to be comfortable with what is agreed among the Afghan leaders, or as a way forward for political setup or political government. So I think it is up to Afghans. Whatever they agree, whatever form of government and whatever political system they agree, then these are the decisions which Afghans will have to take, and then international community will have to then see as to if they agree with those decisions, if they want to support those decisions, if they want to constructively engage. Afghanistan's neighbors, I think, are the first. That is why our foreign minister has recently undertaken a visit.
We'll come to that, Mr. Ambassador, as well.
Yes,
I have questions regarding
please.
The visit of Mr. Qureshi. The most important issue is, Mr. Ambassador, recognition of Taliban or the upcoming government in Kabul. Will Pakistan again be one of the first countries in the region that will recognize the Taliban government?
I think there are two steps. The first thing is that Afghans have to take their own decisions with regard to formation of a political system, government, whatever political reconciliation they come forward with. The question of how the international community, including Pakistan, including the neighbors, will engage with the future political setup, future political government, will be a question which will come at later stage. At this stage, it is a premature question because so far Afghans have not come forward with their own plan. So I think first the Afghans have to take their own decisions, and then international community will definitely take its own decision. Pakistan as part of the international community, as part of Afghanistan's neighbors, will take its own decisions, but at a time when it will be appropriate.
International community has set up conditions for the recognition, and you may have heard about what the conditions are. Does Pakistan have the same condition for the recognition?
The conditions which international community has been saying, has been mentioning are the same, which Afghans are also mentioning, Afghan nation is also saying, and these are that inclusive political setup, respect for human rights, respect for women rights, and rule of law, engagement with the international community, support for the international community, protection of the foreigners living here. So I think all these elements are important for any future government in Afghanistan.
And these are your conditions as well?
No, these are not conditions, but I think these are something which international community has already outlined. Yeah. And we will, of course, we are living in an interconnected world. And whatever government any country is going to have, whatever setup any country is going to have, has to ensure respect for international norms, has to ensure adherence to the international norms, and that is where these things are important. So as I said, that first thing is that Afghan politicians, Afghan leaders, including Taliban, they take their own decisions, and then the question of how international community will engage, how the international community will recognize, that will come at a subsequent stage.
Yeah, Mr. Khan, what do you see the scenario will be in case the recognition does not happen and the conditions are not met by the Taliban?
But that we will have to see, because at the moment, I think the Afghan politicians are engaged in extensive negotiations about the contours of the future political setup. So let's give them time, and then once they have completed that process, only then we will be able to, and we have an outcome, only then we will be able to comment upon that. So I don't want to comment upon something which is not before us yet.
Yeah. The visit of Mr. Qureshi, your foreign minister, to the regional countries, 4 countries it was, what did he specifically talk on with all the regional countries when it comes to Afghanistan? Of course, it was on Afghanistan.
It was purely on Afghanistan. It was on the shared objective of bringing lasting peace and stability to Afghanistan. Since we saw sudden developments in the last 2 weeks, and now Afghan political leaders, Afghan nation is watching as to what kind of political setup Afghans devise for themselves in the coming months and years. So the neighboring countries are also engaged that their messaging with Afghanistan and with the international community should be for support of an inclusive political setup in Afghanistan, for long-term stability in Afghanistan, for fighting terrorist groups, for ensuring that the terrorist groups don't find space in Afghanistan and threaten Afghanistan, Afghan people, or neighboring countries and other countries. So I think all these issues relating to peace and stability in Afghanistan, and for devising a shared position about the way forward. So I think that I think this is something, when we had similar situation after Soviet Union had withdrawn from Afghanistan and we saw civil war here in Afghanistan, this kind of interaction among neighbors was perhaps not existing. So I believe that this is a very constructive step by the neighbors of Afghanistan to send a very strong message for a shared message, a unified message of political stability, desire for political stability in Afghanistan, and moving forward on economic engagement.
About the very visit of Mr. Qureshi and Mr. Khan, was it coordinated with the Taliban here in Kabul?
It was an interaction among the neighbors of Afghanistan. So it has not yet been coordinated with anyone else but only among the neighbors. And neighboring countries of Afghanistan have genuine stakes in peace and stability in Afghanistan. So it is, I would say, for a very noble objective of promoting peace and stability in Afghanistan. And when the appropriate time comes, we will also be sharing the details or sharing our details of our interaction with other neighbors, with the rest of the world also, and with the Afghans also.
Mr. Ambassador, let's talk about the refugees position in Afghanistan. Prime Minister Khan, the Pakistani NSA, Pakistani foreign minister in the past said that Pakistan cannot afford additional refugees or flow of refugees in case civil war erupts in Kabul. What is the stance? What is the policy right now? Is it the same?
Policy is very clear that Pakistan has at the moment around 4 million Afghans living in Pakistan. A part of them is registered refugees, a part of them is undocumented Afghans living in Pakistan. Now, what Prime Minister has said and what our other leadership has said very clearly is that for a country like Pakistan with such economic challenges facing us, with COVID-19 having a lot of pressure on our economy and economies of other countries, it is naturally very difficult to have a heavy load of fresh heavy load of new refugees in Pakistan. But we also know that this is a humanitarian issue, this is a humanitarian matter. So that is why we have taken steps in the first phase where we are providing help to Afghans, those who want to temporarily relocate in Pakistan for running their jobs, for running their works, for running their businesses, and they can come back to Afghanistan as and when it is required by them. And then in the last 1 year or so, we have also brought a liberal visa policy where we provide long-term multiple entry visas to Afghans. That was also with the objective of providing an assurance to Afghans that because Afghans have Pakistan and Afghanistan have a deep-rooted people-to-people connectivity, to assure them that whenever they need to visit Pakistan for their education, for their business, for their work, for their family contacts, it is not problematic for them to go to Afghanistan. But your question about heavy influx of refugees, it will be very difficult for Pakistan government because of our own economic pressures. But then it's a humanitarian matter. We'll need to find ways of dealing with this issue.
You had relocation flights with the PIA, and we have got numbers of people crossed the border in Chaman to Pakistan. Do you have the exact number of these refugees recently went to Pakistan?
These people are not classified as refugees because they are visitors. They are going on visas, and going through on special flights by air or going through Torkham. They have their proper documents, visas with them, and a special permission which is issued by our Ministry of Interior, which we coordinate on daily basis for those Afghans who want to go to Pakistan. So these kind of regulations are applicable to Torkham, Chaman, and other border crossings. So these are not classified. These people who are going there are not classified as refugees. But still, we are ready to help them in terms of their relocation, temporary relocation to Pakistan.
Yeah, the biggest ally of Afghanistan, USA, which has relocated more than 100,000 people from Afghanistan. It is the country is busy talking with regional countries and other countries in order to help them in relocating or evacuating Afghan refugees who are remaining there. Did the US talk with Pakistan about the same issue?
We have been engaged with US, with other with other countries, US allies like European Union and other countries, and we have been engaged with United Nations also, UNAMA office here. that Pakistan, and we have assured them that Pakistan will provide all possible help, because we are the closest neighbor with 2,600 kilometer border, with such close cultural and religious connectivity existing between the two societies. So, we understand that naturally when Afghans have to relocate to some place, the first thing that comes to their mind is Pakistan. So, we will be providing full support, but it has to be coordinated between Pakistan and Afghanistan at government level and with the United Nations agencies. And since government is in the process of formation here, so this process we are discussing with these agencies, we are discussing I mean UN agencies, we are discussing with other international organizations, we are even discussing with media outlets as to how we can help in this phase when there is uncertainty in Afghanistan, to temporarily relocate Afghans and their families to Pakistan, and then later hopefully inshallah when stability comes, the institutions start working here, they can come back to Afghanistan and participate in their country's own development.
Yeah, Mr. Ambassador, when you talk about the temporary relocation, there are two issues. One is that there are Afghan refugees who are relocating to another country, for third country, the so-called third country, when their visa process is completed. Is it the same relocation, what you call temporarily, or is it, for example, for years in order for the people to live there, and when everything is settled in Afghanistan, they will return?
No, it is a temporary relocation. Our understanding is that we are helping these people who are working for different organizations, sometimes for different UN agencies, engaged in relief work or with WHO or other such agencies. If they need our assistance, since these organizations are approaching us, they can be resettled in Pakistan, but it will be temporary relocation, and then according to their visas, length of their visas, then their repatriation to, or their coming back to Afghanistan will be mutually worked out. Yeah. So, that is something which the two, which Pakistan, UN agencies and the Afghan institutions can work together.
Yeah, about the Spin Bollak or Chaman crossing point, Mr. Ambassador, it is still open, and we have reports about the people from Afghanistan who cross the crossing point without even having passport. But in the east of Afghanistan, Torkham crossing point, it is not the case. Why do you think Pakistan is having two policies for a single nation?
No, actually, this is a process. We had started implementing a policy of regulation of movement of Afghans through documented travel a few years ago. And we started implementing this policy from Torkham and by air travel. And so Torkham, you see this policy is being fully implemented. Yeah. By air, you see fully implemented. We had been discussing with the past government about now bringing this policy at Chaman also. And Afghan institutions with whom we were engaged then had conveyed their concurrence for going ahead on this kind of policy, but there are some issues because a large number of labor on this side or that side, they temporarily cross the border on daily basis for their own livelihood, for they are in thousands. So, there are those humanitarian issues which need to be taken care of before bringing a policy of documented travel or implementing a policy of documented travel on Chaman. So, there is no dichotomy in our policy, but it is the stages of implementation, and we will definitely be implementing it after bilateral engagement with Afghan institutions.
Is Pakistan concerned about the full withdrawal of foreign troops from Afghanistan?
We consider Afghanistan, we regard Afghanistan as a sovereign country. Whether some foreign troops are present here or they are not present here, it is a matter between Afghanistan and the international community or those particular countries who brought forces here. So, Pakistan has no position, official position about whether foreign forces are present here or not. We see Afghanistan as a neighboring country, as a sovereign country, and our focus, our perspective is that Afghanistan needs to have an inclusive government, an inclusive setup, and have a stable government which has control over all Afghan territories. It is important because then such a government, such a system will not allow spaces for terrorist organizations like Daesh, ISIS or TTP, JUA or ETIM with which China or IUM which with Uzbekistan and other central countries are threatened. So, I think if there will be an inclusive political system having the confidence of the people of Afghanistan, it will help the Afghan government in having control over all the areas and then engage with its neighbors and international community in the fight against terrorism and for promoting economic engagement. We are deeply interested in strengthening our economic engagement with Afghanistan and with the Central Asian countries.
You talked about the terror groups in the region. International community is deeply concerned about the re-emergence of terror groups, as you named some. Does Pakistan have the same worry and concern?
Pakistan is also deeply concerned about, seriously concerned about the emerging threat of Daesh, emerging threat of Al-Qaeda, threat presented by as other groups which I mentioned, TTP, JUA, ETIM, and we believe that we need to work internationally, we need to work together in a counter-terrorism framework to effectively fight these terrorist groups. It is important for people of Afghanistan, for safety of Afghan people, security of Afghan people. It is important for security of the neighboring countries, and it is important for continuing our economic or for enhancing our economic engagement with Afghanistan and the Central Asian countries.
Yeah, it is really an international and regional issue, the counter-terrorism and terrorism here in the region. Pakistan as the biggest immediate neighbor, which kind of assistance can Pakistan do when it comes to not allowing the geography to be a safe haven for terror groups?
I think we need to have close coordination among our institutions. A few years ago, we established a forum called Afghanistan-Pakistan Action Plan for Peace and Solidarity. When there is an engagement with the future political setup in Afghanistan, other venues could be found. But what I mean is that fighting terrorism has to be an important focus for not only bilateral engagement, but international cooperation in the counter-terrorism framework.
I come specifically to the ISIS-K or Daesh, Khorasan. The deadly two blasts last week in Kabul, which killed more than 200 people. And today and yesterday there were rockets launched in Kabul. And you may have seen the interview of one of the fighters and affiliates of ISIS-K, who said that we will launch and recommence our attacks in Afghanistan once the foreign troops leave. How much is Pakistan worried about ISIS-K?
I think it's an alarming situation. There was this deadly incident in which 170 precious human lives were lost, including Afghans and including even American troops. So I think this is I would say that this is one of the most immediate and important challenges. The ISIS-K and Daesh, it will continue to be a formidable threat to security and stability, not only in Afghanistan, but in our region. So I think we have to work with the international community, work within the region for fighting this threat.
Mr. Khan, a large number of people in Afghanistan, specifically the youths, are the biggest critics of Pakistani policies when it comes to Afghanistan. Do you accept those criticism, and do you, if I say, admit those mistakes committed by Pakistan when it comes to Afghanistan?
I think Pakistan has been consistently saying for past 2 decades that we have to have a political settlement in Afghanistan, and our position has been vindicated that there was no military solution to the Afghan conflict, and a political settlement, an inclusive political settlement, is the need of the Afghan people. With the youth in Afghanistan, we want to remain engaged, because youth in Afghanistan, youth in Pakistan have aspirations for a better future, for not only our two respective countries, but the region as a whole. And I think they are looking forward to having economic connectivity, people-to-people connectivity, infrastructure connectivity between Central Asia, between South Asia to Central Asia through Afghanistan. So I think now, instead of talking about the past or talking about some of these allegations, I think we need to work closely with each other in terms of developing very an environment of close cooperation, not only between the two countries, but at the regional level.
Let's come to the trade, Mr. Ambassador. Ever since the Taliban took power on August 15, the trade between Pakistan and Afghanistan increased by half. Why do you think, what was the problem with the previous government that we did not see such kind of rise in mutual or bilateral trade?
Increase in trade is in the interest of both sides. The increase that you are mentioning that has taken place during these days is because of the period itself, because most of Afghanistan's fruit and other products are going to Pakistan in this phase, and most of Pakistan's supplies are coming to Afghanistan. There was no problem when we were having negotiations with the previous regime also. In fact, Pakistan was very keen to conclude the new APTA, Afghanistan-Pakistan Transit Trade Agreement, with the previous government. The agreement is in any case in its final stages, and whenever it is agreed or signed between the two countries, it will provide greater opportunities for increasing the bilateral trade as well as the transit trade. Our focus is on increasing trade. When we do more trade with Afghanistan, it is in the benefit of Pakistan and it is in the benefit of Afghanistan. When we do more trade, Afghanistan's exports increase, Pakistan's exports also increase. So I think it is in the mutual interest of both countries. So that is why I am saying that we are, it is not regime based. We are interested in increasing our trade with Afghanistan. Afghanistan is the closest trading partner of Pakistan.
But we saw 50% increase. It is too much, Mr. Ambassador. What did specifically happen?
It is incidentally because of this period in which more generally, if you look at this period if you compare the data of this month, August, September of many years, you will see there is a spike in the August, September, October, there is an increase in the volume of trade. So this is not because of any other reason, but because of a mutual need that exists between the two societies.
Yeah, as lots of people are leaving Afghanistan now, of course there were traders and businessmen who left Afghanistan and who were busy doing business with Pakistan. So the number of businessmen and traders decreased in Afghanistan from this side. From the Pakistani side, is it the same number?
No, I think I have met some trading bodies here, leading trading bodies, Afghan Chamber of Commerce and Industry and Pakistan-Afghanistan Joint Chamber of Commerce and Industry during the recent days. And I have been really pleasantly surprised that even big Afghan businessmen, they want to work for increased trade between the two sides. They want more commercial activity to take place between Afghanistan and Pakistan, and not only between Afghanistan and Pakistan, but they want to have this commercial activity increased with between Afghanistan and Afghanistan's other neighbors also. So I think this is a desire among Afghan people, Afghan traders, Afghan businessmen, to have more and more business activity with the neighbors and with the rest of the world. And I think it is natural. So I think we should continue to work towards increasing our economic contacts.
Yeah, Mr. Ambassador, as a last question, was the Republic in favor of Pakistan, or you believe Emirat is in your favor?
No, I think we have no, favoritism towards any Afghan group or any Afghan system. As I said, I will again reiterate, we want peace and stability in Afghanistan, durable peace and stability in Afghanistan. Which system Afghans want to adopt for themselves, work out for themselves, I think it is the choice of Afghans, and we will respect that.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
له تاسو هم ډیره مننه.
درلیدونکو ځانګړې مرکه ما همدومره وه، تر بیا ښې چارې.
له لیدلو مو مننه.